talking about how this all came together. I have with me in the studio Dr. Natay, and we know Dr. Natay from Life Changing Principle. We enjoy her on Monday evenings at 6 o'clock, and we have Pastor V from God's Grace Ministry, and we enjoy her Monday mornings at 10 o'clock.
Yes.
So today our subject is going to be bullying, and I just want to give everybody a brief history how this even came to be. So Pastor V was in the studio doing her segment, and she'll tell you about what God did with her. Okay, you can tell it in a minute. But while she was doing her segment, I said, wow, this would be great if we could get together and do something with other women or other hosts. So while she was recording her show, your file came through.
Yes.
And I put my headphones on while Pastor V is doing her show, and I'm listening, and you're talking about bullying. I said, okay, God, this is interesting, right? So when Pastor V finishes, I said, would you be interested in doing possibly maybe a panel with Dr. Natay? She's doing the same subject. And you say, yeah, I would. You know, I said, I'll see if she's interested. As soon as you leave, you send me an email. Do you think some of your hosts would be interested in doing a segment on bullying? And we're like, absolutely. This is God ordained. It just happened.
Definitely.
1, 2, 3, right at the end. And one thing I want to say about the two of you ladies, it was so interesting because you're both advocates. You're both advocates.
That's my purpose.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And God puts these spiritual gifts in us, right? And the advocate falls under the help. Spiritual gift,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
The person who helps, the one who stirs up,
Definitely.
the one who,
I'm starting.
the one who
Yeah,
stirs
I'm
up,
stir the pot.
and the one who helps movement forward,
Yes.
right? So I said, look, God, look at you. This is just a perfect example of the spiritual gifts working within the body
Yes.
of Christ.
Yes.
So there's nothing wrong with the person who stirs it up, as long as it's done under the gracing of what God has called you to do. And there's a way that we do things, and you were just in order, both of you, in order, right?
Amen.
So
The same day.
the same day, not even a half hour, not even. So I said, okay, God, we're going to do this, you know. So tonight we're going to talk about bullying, and I sent you all a couple of questions just that we can just follow a quick format, but I want to know from both of you first, what prompted you to address the subject of bullying? Dr. Natay, if you could start.
Yes. Well, I have two sons. One, 8-year-old. I was 9 now. 9-year-old and a 15-year-old. And I'm also from Philadelphia.
Right.
So the last little boy that was 10 years old who committed suicide based on bullying was from the West Oak Lane area in Philadelphia. So when I read that story, it was almost the day before I heard about it, and my show was the next day, and I thought, this really touched my heart. And when I looked at the eyes of that little boy, so vibrant and full of life, it just looked like my own children.
Yes.
Yes.
And I thought to myself, one, how do I help not only my community, but how as a parent can I recognize this in my son's life?
Good point.
Because that mother came onto the news and she said, my son came home and said, this was the worst day of my life, and he went to his room just like, any other day, and the next thing she knows, she went up there and he had hung himself. And so I thought, what is it? And then, I'm a clinician, so I thought clinically, how do these kids even know what to do? How do they know how to do it? And then so the spirituality in me understand that this is an attack from the devil.
Yes.
This is an attack, especially on our boys who are our next generation.
Yes.
And so not only do we have to be equipped and aware, but we have to be in war. We are in war. And so we have to understand how to fight this and pray about this and talk to each other about this as well. Today in my show, I talked about David being anointed king as a teenager. And he didn't take the throne until he was 30.
Yes.
So you know what's happening here.
Yes,
you know what's happening. The devil is trying to take out our kids that are anointed to be king.
Yes.
This little boy was probably anointed to be
Such
king.
purpose.
And then here it is.
Yeah.
So I also want our parents to understand, we are fighting the war against principalities. This is just not flesh and blood. And today's generation, and I want to just take the generation of parenthood you know, in kind of my age bracket,
Okay.
I'm not sure we're equipped for that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we even understand.
What
I
we're
think
fighting.
sometimes, right, we pass that spiritual fight on to our parents, right, and we want grandmom to pray
Right.
for it. But you know, I'm in the battle,
Yes.
and I'm
Yes.
in my
The heat
closet,
of it,
and I'm
yes.
with my son, my oldest one just started a job. I oiled his uniform.
All
You know,
right.
like we have to
All
get
right.
down
Yes.
to prayer
Yeah,
and
yes.
covering our children and understand what the anointing, the visions, and purpose that God placed on
their
them,
life.
and know that the warfare is against them right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
And
That's a
so
good point.
that's
Good point.
what prompted me
Prompted
to
you.
address this. One, I can see it. This little boy, he looks just like my little sons,
Wow.
right? And as we build kings in the community, we have to go into spiritual warfare, and this suicide thing and this bullying
Yeah.
thing have to stop.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen.
Yes.
What prompted you, Pastor V?
Well, what really prompted me is that my 11-year-old was dealing with bullying in school. And at first, when she started talking to me about it, you know, I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe it's this little boy at school that, you know how little boys get, they like little girls and they go overboard.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
when we were growing
They
up,
don't
they're
know how
pulling the
to-
pigtails
yeah.
or whatever.
Don't know.
But when I found out that
I like you though.
Right.
Yeah, I like you,
Right.
my little boy, right?
Right.
But when I realized, I found out that he was extorting money from her. And at this time, she was 10. So at 10 years old, he was extorting money. He had basically told her that she had to bring him $40 a day to school.
$40.
$40 a day.
Okay.
A day. And I didn't really notice it until the money was missing in my purse.
Okay.
And the one thing about Aaliyah is that she's very honest. You know, if she does something, she's going to tell on herself before someone else can tell the story. That's just how she is. But, you know, after investigating and asking her, okay, where's my money?
Right.
Type deal, you know, she began to break down and she was crying. She said, you know, this little boy, you know, told me I had to bring him $40 a day at school, or they were going to beat me up. Well, I found out that one person was a clique of kids.
Okay.
And so that's where it really started. And it began to affect her socially. It
Yes.
began to affect her physically, you know.
Emotionally, I'm so sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so much detrimentally as far as emotionally. And you know, I just began to pray. I'm like, okay, Lord, you've got to show me and let me know what's going on. So
Yeah.
I took Aaliyah to our primary care physician. You know what the doctor said to me? She said, there's nothing wrong with your child. What's wrong is that you are engaging in spiritual warfare. This was the doctor.
The doctor said
The
that.
doctor.
Praise the
Ooh,
Lord.
yeah.
And you and I know, and you know of all
Ooh,
things,
right.
that the last thing that a
Yes.
doctor would say to you when you take your child to go see them, if
Yes.
they say
Right.
that you're dealing with spiritual warfare.
Yes.
Legally, I don't even believe they're allowed to
Right,
say that to you,
right,
right?
right. Doctor, we just
So I was like, hold on.
we appreciate you, doctor.
This is serious, but I knew when she spoke those words that I knew
That
it
was
was
true.
God.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
So I knew, like as you said, that it's going to be a battle,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And so I just began to pray. I began to teach my kids. Like I teach them how to pray, and we do devotionals every morning. You know, at that time we were doing devotionals every morning, and they had their books. So I could see why the enemy had began to fight her so strong.
Sure.
But then God started sending people to me, and he sent a prophet to me. And what the prophet spoke to me, and she said, your daughter is sent. She's a sent one. And she began to share with me the gifts of the Spirit that she has.
Right.
And I know the gifts were there, and I knew that they were there. But in my mind, I'm like, now?
Yes.
You know, right now? Like,
Wow,
Yes.
that's the key.
is it now,
Yes.
Lord, that, you know,
Yes,
do
they're
I
being
need to
developed.
start training her and
Yes.
developing
Right
her now?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And it was just so
Absolutely.
onset
Yes.
for me that I was like,
That's
okay.
illuminating.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
like, all right. Now I'm finding out that she's got the gift of prophecy because she had been telling me things as they were coming to pass, you know, and I had just began to pray. But I'm like, the doctor's telling me she's in spiritual attack. The
Right.
Lord is telling me, he is sending people to me and
Yes.
telling me
Right.
what's going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
So really, at that point, I began to fight for my child. And all the different avenues that I've been through. I mean, I've talked to teachers, I've talked to the school officials, administrators, even the Board of Education. I've been at the Attorney General's office. And what I found in all of this is no one wants to be exposed, whether it's a child a school official, the organization itself. No one wants to be told on. And so when I reported the bullying incidences, do you know they didn't even log them as reports?
Absolutely.
They did not log them as reports because they did not want the reports to be known as their status
Yes.
on Facebook
Yeah.
or social
their
media
sites.
on
Yeah.
their sites,
Yeah.
that there were so many incidences of bullying, right? So they
Wow.
were trying to protect their image.
Mhm.
And I said, wow, that's crazy,
Mhm.
you know, but how many parents are not aware of that,
Right.
you know? So that's what really moved me to,
Wow.
you know, and I'm still in that lane to the
Sure.
point that when the Lord spoke to me in prayer, He said, you need to be lobbying. So, like, my goal of getting out of this is to be able to establish new rules, new laws. I mean, I'm sure there are laws that are out there for
Right.
cyberbullying and bullying, but they need to be followed. I believe the teachers in the schools need to be held accountable because they're not following them.
Right.
You know,
Wow.
they're not
Right.
following them. So,
Yeah.
So this is
Yeah.
good. Again, this is the advocate. This is the gifting within you.
This is
That's
the
been
moving
stirred.
forward.
Yes, the moving forward. And I praise God for that. So now, what are some of the signs of bullying? I think that's one of the things that we get kind of hung up on. What are some of the signs that a child? You know what? We even found most recently. We had a woman 70 years old. We asked her, "How can we pray for you?" And she said, "For bullying." At 70 years
Right.
old.
oh, yeah.
So that took me aback. I
Yeah.
said, that's still going on at that age? So what would be some of the signs that we could look for that someone's being bullied?
I think, you know, so back in our day, it was called, you know, you making fun of.
Mm-hmm.
So
Teasing.
teasing, and so I still think that there's a subtlety in that that
Okay.
exists, right? And sometimes we take that for granted.
Yeah.
But and we call it, our generations may call it weak. You know,
Yeah.
we weren't that weak.
Yeah. Just
You
get
know, we
over
were
it.
we got
Just get
over it,
yes.
or we'd had a little fight, or
And
we
we
would
moved on.
we moved on.
Yes.
But today's generation is different. They're equipped different. They're built different,
Yeah,
and they're
yeah.
shaped differently.
Yeah.
School boards and schools are also different,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And social media has changed how we deal with
How we
things.
deal with things.
So on a
Absolutely.
subtle note, I think just making fun of, right? And kids are very sensitive.
Yes.
So
Yes.
whether it's cyberbullying or bullying in school,
Yes.
the name calling, the making fun of, like we said,
Yeah.
pulling the hair because, you know,
I
I
like
like
you.
you. You know, but that's taken
Social skills
differently.
we need to learn.
Right,
Yes,
so
it
it's
is.
just I
Yeah.
want parents really to think about, yes, there are other things that are very, you know, specific, right? But sometimes I think we take for granted how kids
The
are
subtle,
impacted
yeah.
about people making fun of how they look.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
People making fun of their skin color.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
we grew up in that. So we were like one generation removed from
Right.
that. So we
Yeah.
expected that, right? We have a blended, more diverse society.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
you may go home with a parent who is African American and Caucasian.
Yes.
So when I go to school and they tell me that I'm black and I'm brown and I'm the boogeyman or whatever, you know, then I don't know that because we don't talk about that at home. Right.
Yeah.
And so
That's different.
just think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the difference. And so just making fun of them. You know, one kid said to me, not even just someone else put them in a situation they weren't even into. She didn't even like the guy. They thought she liked the guy,
Okay.
and so they started teasing her. And we see that story happen to a kid in Texas. Similar
Yes,
situation where
yes.
she killed herself in front of her parents because they were teasing her about not, you know, liking the guy that she really didn't. So it's, again, parents, don't miss this. It's the very
the
basic, subtle
Yes,
things
it is.
that we went through
Yeah. That are still happening.
that are still happening.
Yes.
That whole skin color thing, you know, I know we live in this blended society,
But there's still an issue.
they are
Absolutely.
still, you know, don't use this bathroom. You never know what these kids are being taught at home, and they bring it to school.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And our kids are not like us. They didn't see these things growing up. You know,
And
they
it makes no sense, I think, a lot of times.
no, it makes no
It
sense.
makes no sense
It
to
makes
them.
no, especially
Yeah.
when they don't see it at home.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
back then we were forced to watch Roots, right? They don't, you know, we knew it, right? Like we had off that day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They're like, seriously?
Right.
What? They don't get it. Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
get it. So
Yeah.
even the common things that we went through
are very
are
different.
very different.
Yeah. So that subtle teasing.
Teasing.
And it's going to be constant. You'll
It
find.
is constant.
It's gonna be
Constant.
constant. Yeah. What do you,
Some of the signs through my experiences, you know, if you know your children.
Mm-hmm.
So with my Aaliyah, I say, she's very outgoing, but she began to be very introvert,
Okay.
withdrawn, started talking about and conscientious of what she looked like, what she's wearing.
Yeah.
I'm ugly. The self-esteem began to just drop, you know.
Okay.
And that's a huge, huge, huge red flag. And there was at one point she didn't want to eat. She just wasn't eating,
Right.
you know. So those were some signs for me, and I'm like, this child eats all the time, you know. So you just have to have those questions. I know when we were growing up, you'd come home from school, your parents would, you know, ask you, what happened today in school?
How was your
What
day?
went on? Who did you
Yeah.
speak to?
Yeah.
What, you know, how was lunch? How was recess? Whatever. And so I've just gotten myself in that habit. I ask questions, and when I can't get the questions, I pop at school.
Right.
I
I
pop
love
at
that.
school.
I
Yes.
love that.
And I, you know,
Yes.
and I may
Yes.
ask to
Yes.
just check
Yep.
in and sit in on Aaliyah's class.
Yep.
She may not even know I'm coming for the day, but
Yes.
I can remember growing up that
Your
if
parents.
there was a problem, or not even a problem, you know, your parents would be permitted to just show up at the school
Yeah.
And sit in.
and sit in because it does hold everyone accountable.
Absolutely.
It holds the
Absolutely.
students that are causing problems accountable. It holds the teacher accountable to doing their job,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
it holds your own child accountable to
Yes.
making sure, that they're doing what they need to do. You know, we don't see that
Yeah.
Yes.
nowadays.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's a
We don't
support
see
even
it.
to the teacher when you have a parent sitting there.
Yep.
Sometimes even if it's a problem child, you know, they would love to see the parent come in and sit.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
you can see
Yeah.
what that child is doing.
What I've learned in that is that the average class size is 30 kids.
Yeah.
Anywhere
That's
from 26 to
average.
30 is the average size. And there has to be one teacher per 10 children in the class. And so some of the classes don't have that. And the fact that they don't have that, that causes a problem. They can't see everything
Right.
that's going on, and I understand that.
Right.
But at the same time, as it was explained to me, is that when we send our children to school, the teachers become the parent, and they become that role and the
Yeah.
responsibility. So, you know, they should have systems in place. For all the money, I know the school district that my kids go to, it's a public school, but the area is very well funded, the school. They should have those monies in place.
Absolutely.
You know, don't spend money on field trips when you know you need, you know,
An extra body.
an extra body in the
Yeah,
class.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
the substitute or the
Or
TSA
assistant, right.
is more important
Yes.
than going to Ellis Island.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and that was one of the points I brought up with the PTA meeting is that, you know, they raised $7,000 for these kids going on a field trip. But what about the supplies? They don't have supplies. You have to pay for school supplies and all those different things. And that causes a problem even with the kids because some of the kids don't have.
Yes.
And so when, let's say, your child comes to school with the pink book bag and they want a pink book bag and can't
Yeah,
get the
they
pink
can't
book
get it,
bag,
yeah, yeah.
now it's a problem. So then the bullying starts there.
Right.
Because now they're picking on them because of what they don't have,
Yeah.
you know. So I just think that, like you said, it's daily communication, finding out what's going on with the children because you can see it and you can see a drastic change in their grades
Yeah.
and the way they, you know, just their daily habits.
Their
Right.
grades are important too,
Yeah.
right? That's a
Definitely.
telltale sign
Right.
that something is going on.